need to give you a body of work so you can understand. Let me go to Trap so he can teach me. Let me go to Trap so I can understand. The reason why we can't effectively dominate the market is because we don't truly understand what's going on in the market. And we don't understand what's going on in the market, how can we function inside of the chaos? What's good, fam? It's your boy, the Wall Street Trapper, and right now I want to talk about the only bank stock that you should own. We got a lot of stuff going on in the economy right now when people are scared to invest in banks. People are taking their money out of banks. So what I want to do is I want to really, truly break down how we look at banks. I want to break down how we should invest in banks. First, I'm going to say this. Man, right now is not the time to be investing in regional banks. I want you to stick with these big four that I'm about to put in front of your face. But also, I'm going to give you some metrics of some things that you should be looking at when you're looking at a bank stock. First, we're going to talk about JP Morgan Chase, right? So these first quarter earnings came out for JP Morgan Chase. The company put up $38 billion in revenue. They had $4.10 EPS. What does that mean, Trap? That means for every share that JP Morgan had, they profited $4.10. So what you'll do is you'll take the profit they had in total and divide that by how many shares they had, and that came up to $4.10. So if you wanted to check that number out, you will multiply $4.10 times all the outstanding shares, and that will tell you how much profit they made that quarter. I just gave you some game. But also what we see is JP Morgan pays a dividend of 2.93%, almost a 3% dividend, which comes out to $4 a share annually. So you take that $4, they probably pay you $1 per share a quarter. So $1 per share a quarter equals $4 annually. All right, so that's the first company. Now, here's what I want you to understand. JP Morgan is the biggest bank in America. It has $3.9 billion in assets. So they have more assets under management than anybody else. So let's go with that. Second bank, Bank of America, right? So Bank of America they reported $26 billion in revenue. Of that $26 billion, they had an EPS, or earnings per share, of 94 cents. So they made 94 cents for every share that they had. One thing you'll learn about this industry is, about the market in general, is they'll break everything down to a per share basis so you can truly understand how much money they made and how much you're making per share. Now, Bank of America, not really my bank of choice. They have a dividend of 3.22%, which gives them an 88-cent dividend. So they pay you about 22 cents per share per dividend at a quarter, right? Let's go a little further. Next up, Wells Fargo. Now, I'm going to keep it real. Like, of all of them, this is the one I do not like the most, because Wells Fargo typically makes a lot of money off of fees. They make more money off fees than they do of investing and wealth management and everything else. Plus, there was a big heavy hitter in the redlining industry. But it's here, I gotta report to you. I gotta give you the information. I gotta break the information down for you and take my biasness out the way. But I don't like Wells Fargo. But the company reported $20 billion in revenue. And of that $20 billion, they made $1.23 of earnings. So for every share that they own, they made $1.23 off of those shares. They have a dividend of 3.11%. And of that 3.11%, they pay you a $1.20 annually dividend. So you break that $1.20 down by 4. That's what you get on a per quarter basis. And lastly, I'm going to give you Citibank. Now, Citibank reported $21 billion in revenue. Of that $21 billion, they came up with $1.86 earnings per share. Again, $21 billion in revenue. Revenues was increasing. And of that, they made $1.86 earnings. What that means, again, is whatever the shares are worth, of that share, $1.86 is profit for them. They pay a 4.4% dividend. of that dividend is $2.04 that comes to you. Again, they pay a 4.40% dividend, and of that, $2.04 come to you. These are the big four. Now, here's what I'll say. So Citibank, I'm not mad at because they actually pay a 4% dividend yield. And if we go to JP Morgan Chase, they actually pay a 2.3%. So one pays right at 3%, one pays a little over 4%. Those yields aren't bad. Those are really good yields. Like, we the only one do a live show with this much production. Like, we bar none, we just different. We not in competition with nobody.
To see somebody that looks like us talk about stocks, because I had never seen that before.
You know, we buy during the drought, and in recession is the best time to buy.
I feel a whole bunch of wealth up in here, y'all.
Someone who gives me raw and uncut information.
I know how to break down a company. I know how to invest.
Being a more confident investor.
That Wall Street does look like us, no cliche.
I would no longer fertilize my fears.
That financial trauma has to be broken. We gotta understand that we are more than consumers.
One share at a time can change your life,
What we doing? What we doing?
We're printing money, baby.
I think over the last couple years, just being in America has made everyone realize that there's no such thing as job security.
It's time to take accountability. It's time to be responsible. It's time to make the sacrifices. It's time to put in the work, because this time it done got worse. Because this time ain't no saving you.
Wall Street looks like everything on Pittsburgh, man. Stop playing.
What I do want you to understand is this. When you're looking at banks, I want you to also look at new accounts received. I want you to look at new accounts received or new account deposits. These tell us that the bank is growing depositors. I want you to understand something. When you invested in a bank, the thing that makes the bank move is depositors, the money that's coming into the bank from new people. You want to see that new depositors growing. That is 100% good. The next thing I want you to look at is this, the money that they have on side for bad loans. Why? Because in this economic environment, we understand that people will not be making loan payments. People will not be making credit card payments. People will be defaulting. So because people are defaulting, you want to know how much money that these banks have put on side for those default loans. Why is that important? Because if they don't have money put on the side for the default loans, guess where that money come from? This earnings per share. So if they don't have money on the side for the default loans, then if somebody defaults, then that money comes from this earnings per share. So this can take this down from $4.10 to $2.50, and now the company does what? Miss earnings, which causes the stock price to do what? Go down, which causes you to do what? Be pissed off. Why? Because you feel like you lost some money. When all they had to do was put some money on the side for default loans. The next thing I want you to understand is this, money from wealth management. I love this because this is why I love JP Morgan. I love JP Morgan for that fact because they have a huge wealth management section of their business, which means they make a lot of money from just doing what? Managing people's wealth. Unlike other banks, a lot of banks have money from loans, credit, fees. Those are important, but now JP Morgan Chase makes a lot of money just from managing people's wealth. And what happens is that's low overhead costs, right? And so when you're looking at a company like JP Morgan Chase, when you're looking at these banks, you want to see how much low overhead costs that they have. Also, credit requirements. This is important for us to look at. Because I know people go invest in banks, and I'm not mad at you investing in banks because people have their money in banks all the time. Y'all know my saying, turn your bank into a trap house, right? Get the dividends from the bank, get your credit from the bank. And, I'm glad we talked about this. The reason why I brought these four banks up is because they are the strongest four banks on the market right now. We are in an economy where banks are falling like crazy. And if you're gonna invest in a bank, I need you to be invested in the strongest banks. And one of the things that JP Morgan has over the other banks, they are the biggest bank in America, meaning they have more assets than every other banks. Two other banks that I would like to say that's notable would be Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs. Now, the thing about these two banks, what makes them different than these four is this. Watch this, y'all. It's because they specialize in, watch this, wealth management. So Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, they are a wealth management bank. So you don't get deposits in those banks. So now Goldman Sachs, they're partnering with Apple, with the markets, but these banks typically do what's called underwriting. So businesses go IPO on the stock market, they typically go through these two banks, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, or another bank called Piper Sandler, right? So these are the banks that do asset management and wealth management. They underwrite for companies that's going public and they deal with businesses. So, but these are two other banks that I would say fall into that big six. So we got Morgan Stanley, we got Goldman Sachs, we got JP Morgan Chase, we got Citibank, we got Wells Fargo, and we have Bank of America. That's what we missed. So those are the six that I would say look into if you want to play it safe, you want to get a good dividend. And typically these bank stocks can move. Now, I think right now you'll go through something. We're looking in them, but I think over the long term, these banks will play off real well for your portfolio. It's your boy, the Wall Street Trapper. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe and send it out. This is Trapper Breaks Down the Banks. Salute.